Nowadays, the word Apple has become a byword for greedy, corrupt, money-hungry megacorporations, ridiculously overhyped brand loyalty, and overpriced and increasingly pointless vanity products manufactured in Chinese sweatshops, which are at best a marginal improvement over the previous generation. The kind of company that caters to snooty, pretentious elitists with more money than sense, or spoiled wannabe anarchists who tweet about smashing the system while sipping their Starbucks frappuccinos. But believe it or not, there was a time when Apple was a genuine innovator, the ultimate synergy of form and function that helped to revolutionize the world of personal computers, global communications, and even how we listen to music. And it all started with a college dropout named Steve. Steve Jobs is, and always will be, a divisive figure in the world of technology. To his supporters, he was an infallible technological messiah helping to usher in a glorious new age of human development, and to his critics, he was a demanding, narcissistic asshole who took credit for other people's work, refused to accept any kind of criticism, and revelled in the cult of personality that had grown around him. But which one of these was the real Steve Jobs? Well, in 2015, director Danny Boyle and screenwriter Aaron Sorkin did their best to answer this question with their own biographical movie, helpfully titled Steve Jobs. A kind of loose narrative that centres around three pivotal product launches in Steve's life, the film depicts a lot of the problems, arguments, rivalries and disasters, both personal and professional, taking place behind the scenes. And I've got to be honest here, it's an absolute joy to watch. The story picks up in 1984 with the chaotic launch of the Macintosh, and straight away you get an insight into the kind of man that Jobs is, openly threatening to humiliate and shame his engineers if they can't get the Mac working properly, and coldly dismissing his ex-girlfriend's pleas for more money to support their daughter. He's like a whirlwind, constantly issuing streams of orders and instructions, coming up with crazy ideas on the fly, and all while arguing and insulting anyone who challenges him. Flash forward a couple of years and Steve's been forced out of his own company after clashing with its board of investors. He's about to launch his own next computer, despite warnings from most of his friends and colleagues that it's too complex and expensive, including John Sculley, the new CEO of Apple, who played a major part in forcing him out. The final act focuses on the launch of the iMac in the late 90s, the computer that finally delivers everything Steve's been promising all this time. By this time, the fortunes of the two men have reversed. Scully's been forced out after bringing Apple to the brink of bankruptcy, and Steve's been reinstated as CEO. Older and more mature now, he's able to make peace with his former enemy and finally reconcile with his daughter before going out on stage to launch the machine that would change his world. Steve Jobs represents in many ways the classic hero's journey, a flawed man who sets out on an epic quest to achieve some grand objective, suffers major setbacks and adversity along the way, and ultimately emerges as a stronger, wiser and humbler person as a result. Steve makes a lot of mistakes in the course of this film, his hubris and selfishness turning allies into enemies and ultimately bringing about his own downfall. His relationship with Scully is particularly important in all of this. The movie plays it out in reverse, first showing the men as bitter rivals, then explaining the reason for their antagonism, and finally showing flashbacks to the promising beginning of what should have been an excellent working relationship, just as the two former enemies finally make peace with each other. Their differences forgotten now that there's nothing left to fight over.
Did I do this? Screw it up?
Let's let it go now. Has to be time.
It's an interesting creative choice, and in the hands of a lesser writer and director, it could have come across as cliched and convoluted, but it works perfectly here, and it really brings home what a missed opportunity the two men represent.
Things we could have done together.
God, the things we could have done.
If Scully represents Steve's professional struggles, then his strained relationship with his daughter Lisa represents his turbulent personal life. At the start of the movie, he refuses to even acknowledge his parentage, coming up with increasingly ridiculous explanations for why she isn't his daughter, withholding support from her mother and basically pretending that she doesn't exist. Only by the end of the movie has he finally found the perspective and maturity to recognise his own failings, apologising for the time they've lost, and hinting that he's going to try to be a better man in future.
Why'd you say you aren't my father?
I'm poorly made.
When it comes to movies, there's nothing more satisfying than watching great actors paired with strong material and talented direction, and that's exactly what you get with this movie. Aaron Sorkin is well known for his ability to write sharp, intelligent dialogue, and Steve Jobs is no exception. Some of the monologues, threats, and insults hurled by and at Steve are fucking legendary. These are all smart people bitching at each other in high-pressure situations, but it soon becomes clear that Steve himself is operating on a different level from those around him. That being said, the movie does seem suspiciously forgiving towards him at times, tactfully glossing over his ruthless decimation of Apple when he came back from the wilderness, or implying that the failure of the next computer was part of some grand piece of 4D chess instead of a disastrously miscalculated product. Michael Fassbender absolutely nails the performance. Yeah, he doesn't particularly resemble the real Steve Jobs, but like any good actor, he manages to embody the essence of the man he's playing so that you quickly forget about the fact he doesn't look like him. Jeff Daniels seems to have gone through a bit of a renaissance in recent years, and he delivers some of his best work here as Steve's reluctant adversary, able to switch easily from a supportive father figure into a sharp, ruthless opponent. Damn, the movie even manages to coax a decent performance out of Seth Rogen as an increasingly embittered Steve Wozniak. Their final conversation, where Steve stubbornly refuses to acknowledge the work of previous generations of Apple engineers, is particularly telling. Despite all his growth and self-reflection, he's clearly still a deeply flawed individual.
But you've never had any respect for me. Now why is that?
I'd at least consider the possibility that it's because you've never had any from me.
In this way, the movie paints a nuanced and surprisingly moving portrait of a brilliant but damaged man, abandoned as a child, misunderstood as an adult, and never quite able to let other people in. A man who can solve almost any technical problem the world can throw at him, but can never quite find his way around the most vexing enigma of all: himself. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.